The basement already, the basement had just been sealed off, so there was no longer a big hole in the ground, and since the lights were working, down there we had a source of light. While we worked down there at night, one of my co-workers, Jordan, went upstairs, and then outside to help with work on the add-on section outside. I was tinkering with the electrical components a bit. I was no electrician, but I had a basic understanding of what I was doing. But suddenly the power went out. I knew it had nothing to do with what I was doing. I figured there must have been a power outage in the vicinity. The four of us didn't keep our phones on us due to the nature of our jobs, plus how dirty our hands would get. We all kept them in our jackets that we hung upstairs, but luckily one of the tools we kept in our vests were flashlights. Before I could even reach and grab for my flashlight, though, I started to hear a rattling noise. The closest way I could come to describing it was a bag of coins being shaken. Not exactly, but close enough. It seemed to come from inside the tiny soon-to-be bathroom. I took the flashlight out from the pouch on my vest, turned it on, and aimed it towards the bathroom section. We had already put up a door, and it was slightly close to be covering my view from the actual room itself. It didn't sound like any kind of infrastructural sound, so I had to imagine it was one of my co-workers. I went to the door, and as I write my hand around the side of the door, I waited a second before pulling it open, just because I needed to gather my bearings. But when I did swing open that door, my flashlight revealed some person dressed in all black standing face in the corner of the tiny room, so that I couldn't see their face. That is, until the person turned their head like a deer reacting to a sound in the woods. All I saw through the flashlight was the glow in their eyes. I slammed the door shut and ran up the stairs of my heavy boots, looking for my co-workers. They were all outside, apparently about ready to pack up and call it a night, since the power in all the nearby buildings had gone out. I counted 3 of my co-workers, so it couldn't have been any of them in that tiny room. I asked all of them if anybody else who worked in that building had been there at all that night. They all shook their heads no, so at this point I had to lead them downstairs to show them the creepy stranger in the basement. They followed me to the basement, into the tiny room, and as I feared would happen, that person I saw wasn't in there anymore, or in the entire basement for that matter. I was obviously embarrassed when they didn't believe me, but I wasn't gonna hold them hostage and make them believe me, so we all went back outside and packed up. I was the one with the key to the building, so I had to lock up when everyone left. After getting into my car and seeing the others drive off, I can't describe it, but I got a feeling inside of me that made me want to go back down into that basement and check one more time for that person I was sure that I saw. I took a deep breath, got out, unlocked the door to the building, and went back down to the basement. The power was too loud, so I walked down the stairs with 2 flashlights on the one I was using before, and now my phone as well. I made it to the bottom step and then stopped. The dead silence in this cramped, unfinished basement, mixed with the fact that I was anticipating a sound, freaked me out to the point that I was about to turn around and go back upstairs, when suddenly I heard the rattling again, coming from the tiny room again. I didn't even look, but when I heard it, I felt my heart in my throat, and I stormed up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut again, and locked the door to the building, and drove home. Thank God it was a Saturday, so I wouldn't have to be back until Monday. I made sure not to work in that basement alone anymore. However, and thankfully, we finished the work within a couple weeks, and nothing else really strange ever happened. It was a normal night in the cold month of February. My wife and I were watching a late-night movie in our room in bed. Before going to sleep, at some point in the movie, the TV suddenly shut off and the room went dark. My wife and I let out simultaneous grunts in annoyance. The lamps, clocks, everything went out, so the power must have gone out. I told my wife I'd go outside and check if the neighbors lost power too. I opened the front door and stepped out onto the stoop for only a second or two, because it was freezing outside, but I could see lights on in the neighbors' houses, so it seemed to be just us who lost power. We had the fuse box in a small boiler-type room in our basement. It seemed unlikely it could have anything to do with that, but I had to give it a shot. I had no idea what else I could do. I went downstairs with a flashlight. One weird thing. About our house is you have to walk down the stairs to get to the basement door, like the door is literally on the basement level. I was tired, so I kind of slowly and lazily stomped down the steps. When I got to the basement door at the bottom, I turned the doorknob and tried opening the door. It wouldn't push open though. I tried a little harder, but it still wouldn't budge. My wife must have locked it. I went all the way back upstairs to ask my wife where she put the basement key she got out of bed and said she'd get it for me. I followed her downstairs to the kitchen where we had a key hanger. She flipped around the many keys until she pulled off the basement key and handed it to me. She then went back upstairs to the bedroom while I went back down the stairs to the basement door. I put the key in the lock and turned it to the right, then tried opening the door again, but it still wouldn't open. I went back up the stairs and called for my wife to come down. When she did, I asked for help like a child, since she was the only one to ever lock this door. She came down the stairs with a flashlight, making fun of me for not being able to use a wooden door, and before she even tried using the key, she turned the doorknob and gave one good push and the door creaked open. I was dumbfounded. I swore up and down the door wouldn't open. Then I joked that I loosened it up for her. Once again she went upstairs to the bedroom. I entered the basement, flicking the light switch on, which only led to more darkness. Flashlight still in hand, I went to the boiler room. When I got inside of there, I tinkered with all the switches, flipping them from one side to the other until finally the lights in the basement flicked on. I was relieved. I shut the tiny door to the fuse box just then. However, there was a sound from outside of the boiler room, the sound of one of the basement closet doors creaking. I took a peek outside at both of the doors. One was closed, the other was slightly cracked open. My heart started beating faster as I went over to the door. I stood about 2 feet away from that door, listening. For some reason, it took until then for me to think, why? How would the switch in our fuse box for power be switched off all of a sudden? Then I started to think, what if the basement door was never locked? What if someone was simply pulling it shut? After a few moments of silence, I heard a deep exhale in the closet. I took off for the stairs. This time, I'd never ran up a flight of stairs so quickly in my life. I ran to our bedroom and yelled and distressed my wife. I was not acting like the man of the house at all. I'll admit I was too afraid. I did call the police, though at some point after the phone call, before the police arrived, we heard the sound of glass breaking outside. I looked out my window, but it was too dark to see anything in the backyard. When the police arrived, I led them quickly to the basement, but by then, the closet door was completely open and it was empty. We also noticed shattered glass in one corner of the basement and things knocked all over the floor. Whoever was in the closet managed to climb up a ledge where we keep collectibles, smashed the window, and climb up out of the basement to the outside. In other words, they escaped and were never caught. That night we kept the basement and living room lights on all night and locked every door in the house. The next day we have the glass fixed. We don't even live in a bad neighborhood, so it's really scary to think that something like this could happen to basically anyone. I work as a janitor at a commuter college campus. I won't disclose for my own privacy and safety. A job entails cleaning the hallways, classrooms, and bathrooms of varying buildings on campus. Usually I work later hours in the day, like 1 to 9 o'clock, when the campus is less crowded. There was a stormy night in the summer that I was working. The college offers summer courses, obviously, so yes, I work in the summer too. This was during one of the biggest storms we've had that year. Extreme winds mixed with a torrential downpour. It was later in my shift, anywhere from 7 to 8 o'clock. I was currently in the activity center hall, which didn't hold any classes, just a big ballroom, a small theater, and varying classroom type rooms used for general purposes. It was usually one of the quieter buildings on campus, apart from when events were being held in it. I very well may have been the only person in that building at that hour. I was cleaning in the downstairs section of the building. It shelled the game room when suddenly the whole place went dark. like pitch black except for the red glow of an exit sign near the doorway to the stairs. The power shortly went out. I took out my phone and called one of the other janitors who was working in another building. He told me that power went out in his building too, which meant the whole campus probably lost power due to the storm. After hanging up, I figured my job down there was done, so I followed the exit sign, but nearly _ myself when I saw someone peering their head from around the stairway. I called out thinking it was maybe someone who worked in the building, but before I could even really say anything, they disappeared upstairs. I ran to the stairway to try and follow, given that I would have to most likely lock up the building now and had to make sure everyone was outside. Quite frankly, when I got upstairs, I didn't know what to do. In the total darkness, there were very few backup lights that were still laid in case of blackouts, and they were very, very dim, only lighting up basically a little around their immediate surroundings. I started calling out in the dark, seemingly empty building that I had to close up. Everyone and anyone must get out. The hallway in this building did one big circle around the big ballroom, and backup lights were distributed throughout the hallway. However, like I said, they were far between and extremely dim. I started doing my round through the hallway, and I was pretty sure I heard footsteps behind me. I turned when I was under one of the backup lights, but I didn't see anything behind me. I continued around the hallway, checking each room. When I checked the last bathroom and found no one, I figured the building was empty and safe to lock up. Walking to the front of the building, I heard footsteps again. This time I knew someone had to be behind me. I turned and saw a silhouette standing in the dark just beyond one of the dim lights. I called out, "You have to leave the building," but the way they were standing there just made me uncomfortable, and just then they turned and ran the other way out of sight. I didn't know what to do, but chasing someone and physically removing them from the building was above my pay grade. I continued for the front door, planning on calling campus police. When I got to the front door of the building, I turned back to the darkness that was the lobby of this building, and about 20 feet away from me I saw that silhouette again. There's time hiding behind a half-open door. I say silhouette because all I could see was a black figure. I didn't see any body or facial features. I left the building and called the campus police. A couple of them came to check out the building, but they couldn't find anyone. Later that night, I got a disturbing phone call. It was campus police. They asked me to describe the person I saw the best I could, but I truly couldn't. I couldn't see anything about them. Then they dropped a bomb and told me there was a killer in the area who was in hiding and was spotted by a local resident near the college campus. When I hung up the phone, I felt a shiver run up my spine. I didn't get much sleep that night. I also didn't feel safe. I worked for a while after that.